Hi fellow YouTubers, it's me again. Haven't done a video in about 3 weeks. Mainly because I'm still working on my office here, getting everything ready in my new house. And just came back from Mexico this week. So I've done a lot of thinking, and I want to talk about, well, you've already seen the title. I want to talk about evolutionists' hypocrisy. Now, I'm quite sure I'm not talking about every evolutionist out there. And pretty much every evolutionist is, in general, they're atheists, although there are Christians that believe in evolution, etc., etc. So anyway, I want to say up front that, you know, when I do videos like this, and the videos like the myths of atheism, and atheists, I did a video on how atheists also believe in fairy tales, they're just scientific fairy tales. My intention is not to pick on atheists or evolutionists or to come at them or attack them. I want you to understand. I'm trying to get you to see a greater point. And that greater point is that every attack that atheists and evolutionists make against Christianity can be turned back on them, and thus they are guilty of the same thing. In other words, the atheist will say to himself, well, I've really thought my arguments through, but that's not necessarily true. Many atheists are just repeating what other atheists have said without any thought whatsoever into the consequences of those ideas. But they'll turn around and accuse the Christian, oh, you're just repeating what you've heard, but that's what they're doing. And you see this all the time. You see it, again, you watch my video, Myths of Atheism. So what I'm saying is if atheists try to pretend like they have this moral ground, evolutionists try to have this moral ground that they just don't have. They try to act as though they're superior to Christians and we're mind-numbed robots that just parrot things and etc., etc. I'm also going to be very shortly, maybe tonight, doing a video on the fallacy of free thought. It's the same exact error. Okay, but anyway, I'm digressing. I want to talk about two major hypocrisies of the evolutionists. And number one is their argument, and I have my notes here. I'm going to talk about two things: indoctrination and critical thinking. Now, whenever Christianity is even mentioned, we haven't introduced any theological teaching. We haven't introduced anything. Just the idea of intelligent design or Christianity or the fact that God was involved in creation. The immediate accusation is indoctrination. Okay, this is what we're doing. We're indoctrinating. Well, okay, let's think about this. When the big argument was in the 60s, I think 1964, when they were deciding about the evolution, whether it should be taught in public schools and different things, the big argument was we ought to have alternate views. Now the irony is, now the evolutionists are ingrained, they don't want alternate views. There's a hypocrisy right there. But the idea that we're indoctrinating merely by mentioning Christianity is completely hilarious. In addition to the fact is, how are the evolutionists not indoctrinating? When I was in 9th grade here in my state, I was taught evolution in 9th grade. I was taught in our 10th grade, and one of those two grades, I was taught it without any other option. How is that not indoctrination? Can you help me with that one? See, I'm not against us learning evolution. In fact, I think everybody ought to learn evolution, because I think when you really see it for what it is, you'll see it for the fallacy it is. So I am not at all against people learning evolution. What they also should learn along with evolution is the weaknesses of evolution and the weaknesses of the arguments. So, and that will go into my second point, because even in Charles Darwin, I have his book right here, The Origin of Species. Let me get it. Ta-da! Okay. Now, I'm having trouble remembering which chapter it was. Chapter 6, Difficulties of the Theory. So even Darwin evidently was willing to have his work examined, but yet evolutionists today don't want alternative theories. Okay, they don't want critical thinking in the classroom. They want indoctrination. Complete hypocrisy. Complete hypocrisy. Again, this is a short video. I don't have time to explain every situation, every position, but I'm sure there are evolutionists out there that are for the arguments of intelligent design being presented. They are fair-minded people. But it just seems to be the majority of the scientific community, so-called, and the majority of folks that are in control of things seem to don't want any dialogue here. So, while the evolutionist will accuse the Christian of indoctrinating, he himself is doing the same thing. Now, point number 2. This creates an environment that is against critical thinking. Why do I say that? Well, if you don't offer the other side's view, then you're not ever at a point where you can think about the opposition, you can critically think about the claims that are being made. You are against critical thinking. Now the evolutionists and a lot of the atheists, they prize critical thinking, but yet they oppose critical thinking in the classroom. For instance, people will mock me for believing in microevolution, small changes based on adaptation and different things. But they say, well, micro is macro. No, it's not. You cannot justify entire species changes or whatever you call it based on small changes or adaptations. You cannot. That's not a logical leap. I don't care how much you try to believe it. It's just not. So anyway, my point is, and also evolution, the forming of the eye, the rods, the cones, all the different parts of the eye, that all would have had to happen in the same the same mutation. They would all have to mutated together to form at the same time. Otherwise that mutation would probably come and go. Mutations generally do not stay, etc., etc. To form the eye. It just doesn't make sense. And these arguments ought to be presented. They are philosophical, yes, but so are most of scientific theories. They start out philosophically. They start out with assumptions, and that's just the way it is. And these arguments ought to be presented, and they're teaching people not to critically think, but just to accept what they've been taught. How ironic! Is that not exactly what they accuse us of? Is it not? Please explain to me how it's not.